we're getting to the tail end of this, guys. I mean, this is tail end of the course here. We started off this practice of law class, course, seminar, whatever you want to call it, talking about different avenues that you could pursue when it comes to the legal industry. And so today I'm going to kind of show you what, in my opinion, is the most lucrative area of law, and that is going to be personal injury. In fact, there's a very specific reason why firms like Morgan & Morgan and Dan Newlin do so much in revenue, because it can be very lucrative if you've done this right. I did a fellowship years ago, and John Morgan was actually my mentor. Amazing guy, and his story is just, I mean, it's so profound and quite frankly, it's ridiculous. I mean, the guy's a genius businessman, and what he's done so well is he's perfected the art of protocol and standard operating procedures. I call them SOPs. I use them in my firm as well, and that's a whole different class, and if you guys are interested, you can always sign up next semester for that. But the point is, personal injury can be very lucrative if you've done it right. And first and foremost, thank you very much for you guys, to you guys for coming to this Saturday seminar. And I know a lot of you are usually not up this early, but that's a whole different story. So personal injury, what is personal injury? A lot of folks think that personal injury means an injury to a person. Well, I mean, that's the verbiage, right? But in reality, the injury doesn't have to be to you as a human being, it could be to your pocketbook. And so that's what I tell a lot of my clients is, you may not necessarily feel that your claim is a personal injury. It could just be that you got into a fender bender and it's not that big of a deal, at least for you. But the reality of it is that is going to cost you money. So it is an injury to your pocketbook. And that's the way that I want you guys to think about this, is damages, right? You learn this in your 1L year when it comes to negligence, because that's usually the biggest area of law when it comes to personal injury. And I had an amazing professor here, Professor Seema Mahapatra. She doesn't teach here anymore, but she had taught us negligence as duty, breach, causation, and damages, but she had broken up causation into approximate and actual causation and proximate causation. And what that means is that you've got, in theory, 5 elements for negligence. And so the biggest one, in my opinion, is going to be the damages, right? A lot of law firms won't even touch a case when it comes to personal injury if there isn't enough damages, right? So think about it. If the damages are only $5,000 and the attorney's office gets 33 1/3% of that, well, that's not really maybe as lucrative as they would like. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's plenty of business to go around if you decide to do personal injury. Just know that there's multiple categories within personal injury that you're all going to have to learn. Now, a lot of us will, maybe the term is wrong, but pigeonhole ourselves into like auto accidents or slip and falls or premise liability or dog bites or something along those lines. And I'm going to touch base on all of that. But the point is, you do you, you find what you love and you find what's very lucrative for you and you stick with it. You don't have to be a jack of all trades. You don't have to be the next John Morgan. You don't have to be the next Dan Newlin. You can just be John Doe and have your practice and have a very fulfilling life. I know plenty of attorneys who didn't realize until much later in life that they can make 6 figures just doing dog bites, or in some cases 7 figures just doing auto accidents. And don't let that number be the thing that guides you in terms of your career path. Money's important, but at the end of the day, money should buy you freedom to do things that you really love. Maybe law is that thing that you really love doing, but at the end of the day, for me, I love playing with my dog. I love going to Disney World. And so law allows me to get the freedom to rub my dog's butt for 2 hours if I wanted to. But that's the point I'm trying to make here, is do you. All right, so here we go. Personal injury doesn't have to be an actual injury to you as a human being. It could be to your pocketbook. Most of the time, personal injury is going to be revolving around the areas of negligence. So you've got duty, breach, causation, and damages. And again, depending on how you've been taught, causation could be broken up into 2 categories, approximate and I forgot the fucking last one. But so with that being said, here we go. Personal injury accidents. Auto accidents, in my opinion, are low-reaching areas of law where you can make money. And what that means is that if you take a case in front of a jury, most jury members will be able to understand an auto accident. So most of the time, you'll be able to, as long as you're articulate, to explain what it is that you're trying to explain to the jury without using technical terms so that it can potentially rule in your client's favor. Auto accidents are pretty straightforward in the state of Florida. Your client gets hit, doesn't have to be an actual injury right away. It could be a financial injury. Your client may say, I have a bad back, my head hurts, my arm hurts, whatever it is. Ask them to go see a healthcare provider as soon as possible, get all the records. You put everything into a nice kit and caboodle. I call it a demand packet, send it off to the insurance company or the driver, and then wait. Oftentimes you'll get a settlement offer, oftentimes you won't. There's entire pre-lit departments at law firms that their entire job is to gather all the evidence, put it into a nice packet, we call it a demand packet, and send it off to the opposing side, and then negotiate. I have done negotiations as little as $5,000 and as large as $50,000 and beyond. We don't do a lot of personal injury at my firm because we've just started doing it, but the point I'm trying to make is that you can do it. Don't let it scare you. And for auto accidents, it's pretty straightforward. Your client calls you, I've gotten hurt, I got into an auto accident, I have this problem. Now you've got a couple of things that you need to think about. Oftentimes, your client got into an auto accident where it's not their fault, but their car is totaled. They have rental reimbursement for 30 days. Your settlement is going to take more than 30 days. So how do you satisfy that client? That is something only you can answer. What we do is we tell our clients up front, it's going to take some time for us to settle the case. And oftentimes it does take time to settle a case. It's very common where cases will drag on for months and months and months before our client gets a check. And at that time period, we have to be putting out two fires. The fire for our client in terms of guiding them and helping them out as best as we can without skating on the ethical rules that we have in the state of Florida, and putting out the fire in terms of negotiating with the insurance companies. So it's something I want you to really understand is that if you get into auto accidents, really any personal injury area of law, you want to understand that there's a couple of things that you really have to be good at, and that's managing time, managing multiple projects, managing communication, and organization. In my opinion, organization is the most important. Your client will oftentimes go to multiple doctors. And what that means is that your team has to get multiple records from multiple doctors' offices. It can be very, very difficult managing all that. But if you do it right, personal injury can be very lucrative, especially on the auto accident side. Next thing, dog bites. I took on my first dog bite case earlier this year, and I'm going to be honest, it's a nightmare. You'd think that because dog bites are strict liability that it'd be easy peasy. Well, the rules of civil procedure tell us that you have to serve the client. Let me rephrase that. You have to serve the defendant before the lawsuit can stick. So even if you have all the facts, dog bit your client or client's child or whatever it is, the facts are clear as day, but if you can't get a hold of the defendant, the lawsuit doesn't really go anywhere. So I know that's a whole different topic and we'll talk about that later, but the point I'm trying to make is that dog bites in the state of Florida are usually considered strict liability and they can be very lucrative, but you gotta be really good at research and investigation. There's entire companies out there that try to go after finding who the defendants are. And with dog bite cases, especially in the state of Florida, dogs are considered property, right? So if your dog bites somebody or you got bit by a dog, the owner of that dog is responsible for the damages that come from it. Oftentimes, and this is sad to say, and I'm a dog lover myself, folks will just make their dog disappear. And then they'll say, what dog are you talking about? And that's where it becomes a problem. Then it becomes he said, she said. And that's why, as an attorney, if you're practicing and doing dog bites, which is considered strict liability, a subcategory of negligence, you want to make sure that you have all your information organized and clean, and you've done the research. You can hire a private investigator to go out there and get the things done in terms of investigation and find these defendants. But the point is, be organized. Next topic in personal injury, slip and fall. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the most litigious, maybe that's the word I'm looking for here, areas of law, because oftentimes you have all the evidence showing that your client slipped and fell in Target or Walmart or Costco or whatever it is. But there's mitigating factors here that may make it so that your client could have prevented that from happening, but didn't. And therefore, your client shouldn't be awarded damages. Think about it this way. You're walking in Walmart. There's a spill in aisle 14. And if your client saw the spill and walked into the spill and slipped and fell, well, whose fault is that? That is a question that a jury can answer. But the point being, that is a mitigating factor. And so if your client is thinking that he or she's going to get a huge payday, the reality of it might be significantly less than that. And that's because they saw the issue and still went towards the danger. You'll learn about that more as you get further along in your career. But slip and falls can be very lucrative as well. At our firm, we get clients all the time that say, hey, I was at a store. Oh, great one. I had a client who called my office and said, hey, I was at a fast food restaurant and I slipped and fell as I was walking from the counter with my food to the dining table. Well, we talked, went through all the facts and realized that he just completely forgot about the wet floor sign. He literally walked into the wet floor sign. When he saw the video, because we did ask for the video from the fast food restaurant, he realized his mistake and voluntarily dropped the case. These things happen. That's the point I'm trying to make here. You could be walking through this university. You could walk into the hallway and slip and fall. Does that mean that you have a cause of action against the university? Maybe, maybe not. But the fact remains is that this can be a very nice, lucrative area of law, but you got to do it right. This falls under negligence. Remember, duty, breach, causation, and damages. Did the venue have a duty? Was that duty breached? Was the damages causation, right, by the breach of that duty? Those are the questions that you need to be able to answer, not only for yourself, for your client, but also opposing counsel. Oftentimes, big firms will just take the case, send a demand packet out, and say, let us get something. Something is better than nothing. And unfortunately, that is why lawyers get the brunt of most jokes. The reality of it is that we as attorneys should be asking these questions from the beginning. Our firm asks them, and you should be too when you start practicing. All right, pedestrian accidents. This one is cool. Cool for lawyers, bad for obviously the pedestrians. With that being said, I had an interesting case come my way about a year ago when I first started my firm. Gentleman was walking through a crosswalk, got clipped by a school bus. School bus driver wasn't necessarily paying attention, and my client's knee got busted. And so I had to refer this case out. We did end up settling for a small fortune for my client. But the point is that in this scenario, we had clear evidence, video evidence showing that my client was in the crosswalk when this bus started turning. Now, that may not always be the scenario here. It's possible that your client was in the wrong. Maybe your client wasn't crossing in a crosswalk. Maybe your client was purposely walking in front of traffic. Maybe your client has mental health concerns that made it so that they were purposely trying to get hurt. Maybe the driver had some issues. The point I'm trying to make is that pedestrian accidents have many, many variables. And when you speak with your attorney, and I'm talking to you, consumer, when you speak with your attorney will be more than happy to explain what those facts are in terms of benefiting you. But it still falls under negligence. Remember, duty, breach, causation, and damages. Online products liability. This is a new area of law. A lot of lawyers aren't really practicing this. They don't fully understand it. It's nothing against them. It's just, nowadays you can order like this USB click thingy that I'm using right now, right? You can order it on Amazon. It'll be delivered tomorrow. Well, oftentimes Amazon is not the manufacturer or the retailer of this product, right? Yeah, I see a lot of you nodding your head. So what happens? This thing blows up in my hand. Am I going to sue Amazon? Well, Amazon is going to turn around and say, well, our job was to only ship it. This product came from a third-party seller. Am I going to sue the third-party seller? The third-party seller is going to say, hey, we didn't make this. Panasonic made it, or Sony made it, or Samsung made it. Well, am I going to sue Samsung? Anybody? The reality of it is you sue all of them. The chain of command, right? You learned this in products liability class. You learned this in you learned this in tort class as well. You sue everybody that you can for everything you can because the rules of civil procedure only give you one bite. And so what you do is, in theory, you sue Amazon, you sue the retailer, and you sue the manufacturer. And then you let them figure it out on who's responsible. I'm not even joking. I know you guys are looking at me like I'm crazy, but the point is, you sue everybody for everything because that's what the rules of civil procedure tell us, because you only get one bite at the apple. So the reality of it is if you buy something online, you sue the distributor, the manufacturer, and the retailer. Oftentimes, insurance companies will settle very, very quickly as long as there's clear liability. I did a case early on in my career where a client bought a mixing, like one of those mixing bowl things. I forget the company's name, but you could put like dough mixers. And my client was able to rip off the safety guard and add more ingredients in. And by doing that, he accidentally let his hand slip in there, and it unfortunately caused some damage to his hand. Nothing too crazy, but it did break a finger. Now, you'd think that because this client removed a safety guard that it's client's fault, but that safety guard has a fail-safe that failed. And so in that case, we did end up suing the distributor, in this case being one of these large companies, eBay and Amazon. We sued the retailer, and we sued the manufacturer. My client did get a 5-figure settlement. The point I'm trying to make is that this is an area of law that's very slowly emerging, but it can be very lucrative. Now, if you're at home and you have a product that you purchased online and it's giving you trouble, oftentimes it could be as simple as the warranty has expired and you've overused the product. And so a lot of times clients will call our office and say, listen, I bought this thing, I bought it 5 years ago, and I'm not happy with it anymore. And so in that reality, unfortunately, you can't really help that client. But if the client just purchased this item and the item is not functioning to its proper capabilities and it's causing damage, you have a cause of action against that manufacturer, the retailer, and the distributor.